The Wheel of Time Season 3 marketing campaign is in full swing, and with just a bit more than a month until the release of the season, Amazon Prime Video has released some first look photos from Season 3 that give us our very first look at some of the biggest characters in the story, like Elida. We also got some set photos from Tanchico, and some interesting viewership news that has an effect on Wheel of Time Season 3. Join me today as I break down all of the Wheel of Time Season 3 news, and I think you're going to learn some things you didn't know before, just saying. Let's first start with the images that came out like a week or so ago that gave us a first look at some of the characters. Not only did we get some images, but if you looked close enough at the files distributed to the various news outlets, they also came with episode numbers attached, meaning that we know which episode each of the images is from. Now, I'm going to run through the images in order of the episodes that they're from, starting with this image here of episode 1 of season 3, with Mat, Perrin, and Rand finally back together. Now, I think based on the background and the columns that this is Tar Valon, which somewhat confirms my theory that at the beginning of season 3, the entire group has left Foam and are either arriving in Tar Valon or they've just arrived there. Now, a couple things to point out in the photo. First of all, this is a callback to season 1, episode 1, when the whole group was together having drinks in the Winespring Inn. They all have been through quite a lot by this point in the story, but it's good to see them all back together before we learn all the new horrible things that they're going to have to deal with on their way to the last battle. Now, in this image, you can also see that it looks like Perrin's eyes are now permanently yellow, which is cool to see. One thing I find incredibly cool is that on my trip to Prague to visit the sets in 2023, I was in this exact space on the Tar Valon set, which you can see on the screen right now. That entire set was gigantic, and there were multiple rooms like this all over the place. Now, before we dive into the next image from season 1, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you like Wheel of Time content. I'll have a ton of content leading up to the release of the show, and of course I'll be covering the show with reviews, breakdowns, and some predictions. That, and I make content for the book series as well. Thank you for liking and subscribing. But let's keep going with this image of Lanfear looking extremely pleased with herself. This image comes from episode 1 as well, and given the columns and the look of the stone, this is definitely Tar Valon as well. And I think it's fairly easy to assume that she's visiting Rand, but either way, she is very happy with whatever just happened. I think it's safe to assume from both the images we've seen and from the trailer that was previously released that much of what happened at the beginning of the Shadow Rising in Tyr will be taking place in Tar Valon. I think that includes bubbles of evil and potentially even some messing with ter'angreal that are stored somewhere. But the next image is this shot of Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve on horseback and looking badass. This image comes from episode 1 as well, and Madeline Madden, the actress that plays Egwene on the show, gave the image some more context on her Instagram, where she posted it with the caption, "The way back will come but once." Now, obviously, given the quote and the unlikelihood of seeing these costumes at this point in the show, I think this is a shot from Egwene's accepted test, something that we know we will be getting based on what we saw in the trailer. In the image, though, the girls and the horses are ornately adorned in what looks like battle outfits, and Egwene and Elaine are both wearing their Great Serpent rings. So Egwene appears to be adorned like Swan. So I'm wondering if this is Egwene as the Amyrlin in her own visions. You know, one other thing to mention here is that the costume designer for the show, Sharon Gillam, has done an amazing job with many of these costumes. I got to meet her in Prague, and I talked to her about the costumes that she designed for season 2, and that was one of the highlights of my trip. You can actually see the video of me speaking to her up on some video up here. I'll have it linked at the end of the video as well if you want to check that out. But another cool thing of note is that Sharon Gillam is going to be the guest of honor at WatCon this year in 2025. WatCon is a Wheel of Time book and show fan convention. Happens every single summer. Last year, we had Guy Robert, who was Uno in the show, out to the convention, and this year Sharon will be there and potentially some of the actual costumes, so we'll see about that. Additionally, Michael Kramer and Kate Redding, the audiobook readers for the Wheel of Time book series, will be there as special guests. They've been a staple of the convention since it started. Everybody loves them. They're a fan favorite. Also, coming to WatCon will be Maria Simmons, who is Robert Jordan's research assistant, member of Team Jordan. She's the one that made all the notes. So not to mention many of your favorite Wheel of Time content creators like Talk Around Riyadh, The Dusty Wheel, The Black Tower Podcast, Tar Valon After Dark, Critter XD, many more. All kinds of content creators are going to be there as well. Tons of fans. It's a total time to nerd out. If you'd like to get more information about WatCon, head to watcon.com and check things out. We'd love to hang out and have some fun talking about the Wheel of Time. WatCon in 2025 is on July 12th through the 14th in Columbus, Ohio. But let's move on to the next image, and this one comes from episode 1. Here we have Elaine and Aviendha having a drink together. Now, this is the first time we've really seen them together in the show, and obviously based on how deep their relationship goes in the books, this is hopefully the beginning of that in the show. Based on the fact that this happens in episode 1, I'm going to assume that this occurs before they go back into the tower, perhaps at the very beginning of the episode. And I say this because Elaine is not wearing an accepted or a novice dress, and I doubt she'd just be chilling with an Aiel that can channel like this if she was back in the tower. The last image we have, though, from episode 1 is this shot of Siuan channeling with some extreme rage on her face. She's not only channeling, but she looks like she's trying to bring the wrath of the Amerlin on somebody. Now, the shot likely comes from the beginning of episode 1, where we know that from both the trailer and from the clip that was shown at CCXP back in December, that Liandrin is unmasked as the Black Aja in the Hall of the Tower, and a fight will break out with the other Black Aja members and the other sitters, and Siuan goes after Liandrin. Also in this image, though, there is somebody right next to Siuan that's dressed in blue right here. Maybe that's another Aes Sedai, hard to tell. This next image comes from episode 2, and it's our first introduction to both Elaida and to Morgase Trakand. Now, this is one of the things that I am the most excited for in season 3. Shohreh Aghdashloo as Elaida here looks exactly as I imagined her. I cannot imagine that she would be anything other than amazing in this show. Next to her is Olivia Williams as Morgase, dressed in a very ornate gown, and I kind of feel like Sharon Gillam is just showing off at this point. Behind them, you can see rose petals on the ground, armed Andorran soldiers along the sides. I think this is showing this is a formal entrance into the Hall of the Tower, with both Morgase and Elaida headed on in. You can see that Morgase is wearing the same crown that we see Elaine putting on in the trailer. It will be interesting to see if Elaine is just trying it on, or if there's a bigger reason why she puts it on in the trailer. What I think is interesting to note here is that this comes in episode 2, right after the Black Aja has likely destroyed part of the Hall of the Tower, and they've definitely killed some people. Combine this with the fact that Elaine had gone missing, and that would put a lot of pressure, I would imagine, on Siuan, especially with Morgase now coming to Tar Valon. I would imagine that's part of the reason Morgase came to Tar Valon. So when Elaine inevitably leaves the tower to help Egwene and Nynaeve on their mission to find the Black Aja, I can imagine that that serves as part of the reason why Elaida would be able to depose Siuan later in the season, and possibly why Gawyn and Galad would help with that. This next image also comes from episode 2, and it is Rand and Lan finally training with the sword. And for whatever reason, this has been one of the things that fans have been missing from the show so far. And while it is a small part of the actual books, it is a large part of Rand's development as a character. So it's really good to see Rand finally getting some training on using a sword, even if his daddy's sword has already been melted in Shamael's chest. Now, I doubt this image comes directly from the waste, or that they're even on their way to the waste yet. I think it's likely taking place somewhere outside the city of Tar Valon. At least that would be my guess. Now, this next image here is an angle of an image that we got in the trailer, and that is of Rand, Moiraine, Lan, Rhuarc, Melaine, Melindra, and Bear at Cheyendair, staring at the clouded city of Rhuidean. Now, this is the exact same shot we had in the trailer, but it's this time coming from the front. This right here is not Aviendha, who I thought it was at the time in the trailer. Rather, that is Melindra, played by Sinova Makodi Lund. I wonder if Aviendha went to Tanchico with Elaine, and if they're going to develop as friends or more, I think they're going to need significant time on screen together to do it, so it makes sense for Aviendha to go to Tanchico. You can also see Melindra standing here next to Lan, and given that she is going to be Malkiri in the show, and that she was taken in by the Tardad, I wonder if they're going to have a strong connection before, it shows that she's a dark friend. Rhuarc here, played by Bjorn Lamberg, looks massive, imposing, and exactly like I like my Rhuarcs. This right here is Bear, and over here is Melaine, the two wise ones that we see in the shot. I think this person back here is actually Egwene, who is hidden by Moiraine. This is one of my favorite sequences from the books. So the whole Rhuidean, Aiel, going to the waste thing. I cannot tell you how excited I am to see this on screen. I have waited for this for a long time, so I am very excited about this. But here we're going to fast forward to episode 6, where we get this shot of Mat, Nynaeve, and Min in the city of Tanchico. Now, we're going to have more shots of Tanchico here in a moment, but they appear to be talking to a man here that I think many have speculated to be Juilin Sandar. And while we don't have a Juilin casting that we know of, that doesn't mean that people aren't correct. That very well could be him. They also appear to be looking off to the side of that character, somebody who's probably behind him. And given that many believe that that is Julian, and we know that Tom Marilyn is back in the show this season, it's very possible that they're looking at Tom right behind him. I guess we'll wait and see. But we'll have more on the outfits that everybody's wearing here in just a moment. The last image is of Moiraine channeling through a crystal sphere that we saw in the trailer. From some leaks in the past, we know that that sphere has been labeled as the Choden Call. Now, keep in mind that that is unconfirmed, but if it is, it's going to be intriguing to why Moiraine has. My guess would be that this is the replacement in some sense for the bracelet, Sa'angreal, that she has in the books, that she ends up leaving for Lanfear. And again, it results in both of them meeting their ending. But also a side note, that costume that she is wearing is badass. But those were the images that we got from a couple weeks back. And we got more images from Amazon this past week, this time with sets from Tanchico, and some more images of the cast there as well. Now, a couple things before we dive in and look at those images. First of all, the scenes were shot in Cape Town, South Africa, where they built an outdoor set for the waterfront area of Tanchico and the exterior wall. The interiors of everything that goes on in Tanchico were shot on a soundstage in Prague. But thanks to WatSeries.com, here is a satellite image of the area that they used for filming, and you can see the docks, some of which we're going to see in a moment here in the images released by Amazon. But let's take a look at the first image, and it's of Matt, Min, and Elaine walking through the very busy streets of Tanchico's dock area in some decked out costumes here. And yes, this is Matt in the front, but wearing a very interesting costume that looks a bit different from the other men around him. Now, underneath the veil, he appears to be wearing the same shirt from the picture that we saw in the first look pictures that we just looked at. Min also appears to be wearing the same thing. So my guess is these are part of similar scenes. But right here, we see a man holding up his wares, trying to sell them as they walk by. And we're going to come back to him in a moment, because I think it's peculiar what he's actually selling. Also, though, in the background, we see some skeletons or skulls hanging about. Honestly, this is really giving me like Tortuga vibes from Pirates of the Caribbean. It just has a very Caribbean vibe to it. This next image here is of Nae'Blis, also wearing the same costume that we saw in the first look picture, and walking very uncomfortably through the same street in Tanchico. Now, we can see the same merchant here, and to me, it looks like he's selling fireworks. I could be wrong, but these look very much like fireworks being sold, so I wonder if he is an illuminator. Back to Nynaeve here, though, for a second. You can see that she still has her braid in, but her eyes are covered in a veil. She looks very uncomfortable, as I mentioned, but she's also not wearing her great serpent ring, probably because they're in the city trying to be incognito looking for the Black Aja. Now we have this image here of some of the denizens of Tanchico, and I'm not sure that there are any characters that we know in this shot, but it's good to see more of the sets, more of the costumes. I just think it all looks pretty cool. It definitely does. It has kind of a pirate feel to it. Here is a wider shot of the set, which again is meant to be the bustling waterfront area of Tanchico. Now this set was actually built using structures and other assets from the Black Sail set, which was a former Starz TV show. But those are the photos that were released by Amazon. Make sure to let me know what you think of them in the comments of the video. And lastly, let me hit on a few other pieces of news here. First of all, we're just about a month away from the release of the show, which means that in all likelihood, we are going to get the second trailer either this week or the following week. This is all extremely exciting, and I'm wanting to see more from the characters that we haven't seen yet in the show's marketing materials. Second trailer, I think, will be pretty awesome. And although I doubt it, I do doubt what I'm about to say, I would not put it out of the realm of possibility that we will see the trailer at least play during the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is February 9th, and the timing is such that they could be playing it during the massively watched Super Bowl, at least in the US. And it could have been one of the reasons why they selected the release date when they did, just sort of times up for the trailer. One other thing of note, a lot of people ask about season 4. And I will say this, anybody that tells you that they know what is going on with season 4 is likely making things up. They have been very, very tight-lipped about this. I talked a little bit about this on my podcast, Valon After Dark. I would not expect to hear anything about season 4 until months after season 3 is released. I think that will be the earliest that we find out. So if you're really hoping for season 4, let's hope that season 3 does super, super well. But that's the news. Again, leave me a message in the comments of the video, what you think of everything, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you like Wheel of Time content. I'll be making content up until the release of the show, and of course I'll be covering the episodes as they release. Special thank you to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon link in the description of the video. And if you like this video, you will likely like one of these here as well. Thank you for watching, and until next time, peace out.